For all the aspirants of 2027, 2028 and beyond, it is important for you to start the preparation of civil services now itself, under proper guidance and from the basics to proficiency. We have started the Elevate batch from 1st of June, and here is the first lecture of geography. The geography sessions are conducted from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, Friday being used for PYQ as well as the live answer writing sessions. In this way, you get your umpteen amount of practice within the class also, and along with that, on Sunday, you have the test where you get the objective as well as the subjective test. You can still join the Elevate batch. Ensure that the entirety of Indian geography is covered from examination perspective. That will be available at a very lucrative price of 17,999, where you will get the entire coverage of GS along with CSAT, along with the test series and the entire PYQ analysis. Now is the time to start preparation. Look at this first lecture video and understand the case of Indian geography, India's location, why we should study Indian geography, the aspect of the daylight saving time, and important factors like the Tropic of Cancer. Hello everyone, good afternoon to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the first session of Indian geography and the batch of the Elevate batch. Now here today we are meeting regarding the case of geography sessions and what approach to follow, what is required for the examination, and also the importance of Indian geography. It is good to see many of you after a long period of time, but all those who are joining us for the first time. Now, Indian geography, the importance of it, the requirement of it for the examination is something that we are going to talk about. We are going to talk about how we are going to proceed ahead in terms of modules. We are going to take a slightly different approach than what you see everywhere else in the market. And I will tell you the reason for that as well. And which books to follow, how to go around with the note making if required, and if not required, what should be the approach. And after a point of time, I will open it up to the questions. So I would urge you that for the first few minutes, please listen to me carefully. After that, I'll open it up for the questions, any queries that you have, any kind of grievances that you have, then we will entertain those. Okay, I'm sure you will be having a lot of queries, grievances, etc. Given that UPSC examination, the prelims have been slightly different from the normal trend, but we will address all of them. Now, when we say Indian geography, it will involve the study of the physiography, the different types of landforms, the kind of river systems that we have, the kind of soil that we have, everything. But why do we study India? Because India is, if anything, unique, for the lack of a better word, significantly supreme in terms of the geographical variation. Now, for a long period of time, when we talked about, or geographers across the world, when they talked about geography, there used to be an adage or a saying that if you want to study geography, study India. Because India has so much variety. If you are able to understand India, you will be able to understand the entirety of the world. It is a unique case. It is a land of opportunity. From one of the coldest places across the planet in Dras to one of the hottest regions in Thar Desert, we have the variety. From the dry, cold, desolate deserts in Ladakh to the highest, heaviest rainfall in the world in Mawsynram, we have the variation. From lush green plains in the north to these isolated islands in the sea, we have the variation. The climate changes, the weather changes, and that brings about a change in the way we dress, in the way we behave, in the way we speak, in what we eat, in how we eat, in what we celebrate, in when we celebrate, and in how we celebrate. The culture changes, the tradition changes. But one thing which remains consistent is India. So, India is not just a geographical name out there. India basically something which represents much larger. From the time when Megasthenes started writing about some of the recorded history, you will find only one consistent aspect about India: a land of abundance. When you talk of, even today, if you go to the museums in Europe, you take a look at the Greek historians and their older maps, what they depicted 3,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago, you will find that they are very particular about the region in Europe. Obviously, it was a Eurocentric vision, but they mark a separate capital letter denominated term, what was used, India. You'll find in almost all the Greek and the European maps, this was depicted. We are not some new phenomena across the planet Earth. We are one of the oldest living civilizations. And when I say a living civilization, means what? The culture, the practice that was followed in this land thousands of years ago is something which still prevails today. And what culture am I talking about? I'm talking about some of the basic aspects. Respect for nature. Even today, this is the land where you will still find, regardless of the faith, regardless of the religion, regardless of the region, regardless of the state, when someone looks at the sky in the midst of the harvest season, if there are a lot of clouds, somebody simply says that if today gods have mercy, the rains will not occur. Means what? You are linking a simple atmospheric climatic phenomena to something divine. That is basically the case of the culture. Respect for elders. That is something which persists up to this date. So India is a living civilization, a civilization of ideas, a civilization of diversity. That is why people who have always come to India as invaders, they have actually settled down. The Mughals, when they came, before that the Turkish who came, they came here to plunder, but they settled down. Because this is the land which gives, never asks. And I always say, when you had the human geographers, when you had the basic theorists finalizing the traits of the human race in different parts of the world, the words of Ellen Churchill Semple, it angers me, but at the same time, it fills me with a kind of optimism. She said that, look, people in the equatorial region, and this is in the late 1800s I'm talking about, this is not the recent times, when people were so clouded in their colonial mindset, in their racist approach. At that point of time, there was this American female geographer who said that, look, people in the jungles of Africa, they have broad shoulders because they carry logs of wood to the dens of the forests. People in Europe, they have longer and stronger legs because they carry food up and down the hilly and the mountainous areas. People in India, they have no such physical trait. They have a paunch belly, right? They are short-heighted because they never had to struggle for availability of food. But what they lack in their physical features is something that they have in mental strength, because they had all the time in the world to think about. Even today, you would see in your surroundings someone who is jobless, who doesn't have a job, who has 10 different things on his plate, right? Doesn't know where, maybe where the next month's paycheck will come from. You ask them what was his opinion about the Xi Jinping and Donald Trump meeting. They will have their own say. We have all the time in the world to think. We are the thinkers, the philosophers. But at the same time, we oftentimes forget that we are a land of opportunity. In, at least in my childhood days, I would always read in our social studies book that India is melting pot of civilizations. Various civilizations have come here, have assimilated and become one. I disagree. India is not a melting pot. India is actually a large salad bowl. A melting pot means what? Everybody becomes one. No, we are not the same. We are different, and we enjoy that difference. Tell me any other place in in the world, entirety of the world, which has got so much diversity. That is why we quarrel. We have our differences, but we progress. Around 65% of our population is below the age of 35 years. At around 1100 AD, we controlled close to around 30% of the global GDP and trade. Around the time of Aurangzeb and around the time of the 1800s, we basically controlled around 18% to 20% of the global trade. By the time the Britishers left, we were languishing at 2 to 3% or 4%. Now, when India is free, we are resurgent. We will grow. And that is where you have to be considering yourself as lucky. You are a part of the generation who will be in the bureaucracy when India makes the change. Many of them are pessimistic that this is the government, that is the government, that is the governance, this is the kind of bureaucracy. No. India grows despite its government. India grows despite its governance. India grows because of the people. India grows because of you. India grows because of the aspiration that you have. And as long as we have our living breath, we will be aspirational, because that is what the land represents, the land of aspirations. And your moves today will decide the future of the country tomorrow. Why you are fortunate? Because you will be a part of the generation which finally witnesses, by the turn of the century, the rise of the new superpower in the world. The world will have to accept the power that is India. You had the famous saying by uh, ex-Maldivian president, Mr. Gayoom, that the 19th century was actually the century of the Atlantic. The Atlantic powers grew. The 20th century was the century of the Pacific. US, Canada, Japan, they grew. The 21st century is the century of the Indian Ocean. There is only one ocean named after a country, that is the Indian Ocean. Because we are a subcontinent. What is a subcontinent? A land of diversity, a land of varied features, not just geographically, but politically, economically, socially, culturally. We are a land of diversity. You move 100 kilometers, the feeding style changes, the food changes, the language changes, the script changes, the belief changes, many of the times the gods change. So if we are a land so diverse, who can control or stop us? What can stop us? Nothing at all. That is why it might take time for us to grow. It is not a matter of if India will grow. India will grow. I will bet my last dollar on that, that India will grow. India will be resurgent. It is a matter of when. That is why you have to enter into services. That is where you will make that possible. And that is where you have to be optimistic. If anything, your information about Indian geography will make the future of India much better. And that is the reason to always believe in the story of the 21st century. And the story of 21st century is going to be the Indian story. And you are going to be the authors of it. So that is why we have to study India. We have to believe in this larger civilization, something which is much larger than what you and I represent, what our differences are about, something which has been continuing in this land. We are the products of this land, and that is India. So that is where we will start the discussion, and that is where we will have all the discussions associated with Indian geography, starting from this land. The moment you understand that this land that we live in is the genesis of everything, that is the moment you will realize what Indian geography is about. Okay? Now I want you to internalize this. This is not something which is out there just for quotation. I want you to understand this, internalize each and every wordings of it. If required, frame it for the answer. Because one question which is oftentimes asked in the case of Indian geography is, why is India referred to as a subcontinent? As a subcontinent. You hear the term Indian subcontinent. You don't hear the term the Chinese subcontinent or the Russian subcontinent and so on. No. Why? Subcontinent represents what? It does represent diversity. Now, what diversity? Diversity is multifold. Geographical. Now, within geographical, you will have the subgroupings, the different types of terrain, from the loftiest of the mountains to the driest of the deserts, climate, right? Rivers. So everything is basically the geographical diversity. Then you have the case of economic, political diversity. For example, when you read about in polity, the fifth and the sixth scheduled areas, for those of us who are unaware, many parts of the country, they have been given a substantial amount of self-governance powers that you can govern yourself. Okay. Now, you will find when you read it in detail, you will find that these are those regions which are present in the hills, between the mountains, in the northeast, in the central portion, etc. Why? Because traditionally, always is the case that these areas have been slightly, and the people living in these areas have been slightly isolated from the other regions. So they have always had a kind of a self-sufficiency in terms of their economy. They have been dependent on the forests. They have been dependent on the local resources, rivers, streams, etc. They have had their own system of governance, which they have followed for centuries, if not millennia. So there is that diversity, which is actually respected in our country. Who is today the advocate of the world, or the so-called headmaster of the world, which keeps on giving lessons to the world? US, Europe, take a look at them. Can they even boast of this kind of a political diversity, of a linguistic diversity? No. These are the countries and the regions which believe in homogeneity, where basically if you are not the part of the crowd, automatically either you move out. What did they do? The Europeans, what did they do to the indigenous population in Australia, in New Zealand, in US? Wiped them out. They couldn't do that in India. The colonialists failed. Why? Because of the civilization that we are, because of the evolution ladder that we have reached, because of the belief in the self-structure that we have. All I'm asking you is to retain that belief. That's it. Now, other than this, you also have the case of cultural diversity. Here, food, language, dress, clothing, and belief. Right? So all that diversity when you talk about here, also one diversity that you all of us have forgotten is the case of people. We are a diverse set of people. When you talk about the ethno-cultural constitution, that is ethnicity, right? Or the racial configuration that you study in anthropology, that you study in geography, you will study that we are a mixture of different races in different areas. So the diversity in terms of the racial mixture, in terms of the ethnic mixture, both of them, racial mixture, ethnic diversity, everything. That is where we are truly diverse. So that is what you have to write in an answer about this particular question, that India indeed is a subcontinent because India is representative of this kind of diversity. Okay? Right? I hope we will be able to do that. Now, when we talk about the location of our country, now we share a very large land border, right? From Pakistan to Afghanistan to China to Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh. We share more than 15,000 kilometers of land border. I have put in this PDF itself the details of it, right? Something which will be available to you. Eventually, we will be discussing this also. So we share a large land border with multiple countries, right? Now, here, that land border, in many of the cases, is their entry to the region of the Indian Ocean. India sits atop Indian Ocean. Okay, so that is where, for example, if you are a Nepal or a Bhutan, your access to sea is through India. That is a very critical position to be in. If you are Bangladesh, you are India locked from all sides. Wherever you look, you will come across India. So India has got a very strategic location sitting atop Indian Ocean. Also, you have to understand, when we talk about the maritime trade, majority of the maritime trade which passes through the Indian Ocean actually passes very close to India, somewhere through here. And India sitting atop Indian Ocean can actually end up utilizing a lot of this maritime trade. That is where we have the southern ports which are so helpful. Okay, so we can gain economically and we can also have the projection of the hard power. In the entirety of the region of the Indian Ocean, Indian military sees itself as the net security provider from Gulf of Aden in the west to the Strait of Malacca in the east. We are the most powerful military in the region, most powerful navy in the region. But we are not the ones who only project power like the Chinese. We believe that the world is a family. So even when it comes to humanitarian and disaster relief operations, India comes first. Be it the lack of drinking water in Maldives, to the cyclone in Mauritius, to the calamities in Seychelles, India has been one of the first responders in the region. That is why even today, regardless of the turmoil in the geopolitics, global geopolitics, we are always in good terms with the region of the Indian Ocean. So in terms of trade, humanitarian and disaster relief operations, in terms of security, hard power, that is what India brings to the table. That is why in Indian Ocean, India is indispensable. Okay. So first of all, we have taken a look at the case of the overall geostrategic and the geopolitical importance of the location of India. India as a country sits atop the Indian Ocean, right? So there is a lot of trade advantage, economic advantage that India naturally gains out of its and owing to its simple and sheer location. So that is the basic benefit of India. Having said that, if we talk about the locational aspect, we are in the completely present in the northern hemisphere. Okay, with Tropic of Cancer almost passing through the central portion of the country, almost. Tropic of Cancer almost passing through the central portion of the country. Tropic of Cancer is what? 23.5 degree north latitude. Okay. Now the extent of India from south to north and from east to west, the distance is also pretty much similar, very similar. Okay, so we'll take a look into that. First of all, India is lying entirely in the northern hemisphere, and the overall location is basically 8 degree 4 minutes north and 37 degree 6 minute north latitude. Okay, so 8 degree to 37 degree and 68 degree east to 97 degree east longitude. Now that is the overall location of India. Now here basically what you observe is that the north to south, east to west extent is mostly similar. However, southernmost point of India is where? Southernmost point of India is in the region of Great Nicobar. That is the Indira point. That is the southernmost location of India. That is at 6 degree 4 minutes north. Okay, that is at 6 degree 4 minutes north, right? But this is at 8 degree 4 minutes north. So that is the overall partially submerged. It is partially submerged, yes. So that is the case of the locational parameters. Tropic of Cancer divides the country almost in two equal parts. So here you see the north to south extent of the country is 3,200 kilometers. 3,200 kilometers. East to west extent is again 2,900 kilometers. So roughly, more or less, the same. Now, every country basically follows a kind of a time zone. Based upon the longitudinal extent, every country follows a kind of a time zone. You don't have to remember this number. Broad, rough idea about roughly around 3,000 is there, east to west and north to south. That will be sufficient. Now, here, Kanyakumari is here, my dear. Kanyakumari is here. Indira Point is here in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. Okay. Kanyakumari is present in the mainland, the southernmost point. Indira Point is present here. Okay.
So when we say 8 degree 4 minutes north, that is the southernmost extent of the mainland India. When we say the southernmost point overall of Indian territory, it is 6 degree 4 minutes north. That is the case of Indra Point. Is that now clear? So that is the basic difference. Understood now? I hope we don't get confused now. Now, every country follows a time zone based upon the longitudinal location that it has, right? So you have the case of Indian Standard Time, which is followed, which is basically 82.5 degree east longitude. For those of us who are not aware about the basics of latitude and longitude, so when you consider the entirety of the planet, whenever you consider the entirety of the planet, now you have the lines which are lines of parallels or the horizontal ones, and these are your latitudes. Okay, these are your latitudes, lines of parallel. Longitudes are basically the lines joining north and south pole. These are your longitudes in general. Now the planet rotates how? East to west, or rather west to east. The planet does rotate west to east consistently, isn't it? So whatever is the time that is basically followed in terms of the standardization based upon the longitudinal position. What do we mean by that? If I simplify it, so 0 degree longitude is the one which is your prime meridian. This is your prime meridian. Prime meridian will pass through where? Through the region of UK, Greenwich, near London. There is a place known as Greenwich. There is a place known as Greenwich, which is near London. Okay, so that is considered to be the prime meridian. Now, all the various different longitudes, they have the reference time based upon the how far they are or how close they are from the prime meridian. Now think about it. If you consider a place A and a place B, right? This is the movement, the rotation west to east. Now, if you consider this to be the sun, now which will receive sunrise first? Always A will receive sunrise first, isn't it? Always A will receive sunrise first, then B will receive sunrise, right? So India is to the east of London, to the east of UK. So India receives sunlight first. So that is why in India's case, if you consider this, 82.5 degree east is the standard meridian. That is where we follow the Indian Standard Time. Indian Standard Time. Okay. Now, when we say Indian Standard Time, that is 82 degree 30 minutes east. Now, for example, when we say kilometer, kilometer as a unit has got a subunit that is meter, subunit that is centimeter, isn't it? Similarly, kg has a subunit that is gram, subunit that is milligram, like that. Similarly, when you consider degree, is further subclassified or subdivided into minutes, further subdivided into seconds. It is not to do with the minutes and seconds on your watch. It is a kind of a separate classification. But degree is also classified into minutes and seconds. So 82 degree 30 minutes east is the Indian Standard Meridian. Now, Indian Standard Time, here, right now, for example, it is 3 p.m. in India. So in Greenwich, in London, near London, would it be later than 3 p.m. or earlier than 3 p.m.? What do you think? Earlier than 3 p.m. because sunrise is first in the east and then in the west. So that is why Indian Standard Time is generally classified as GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, plus 5.5 hours. So right now, if it is 3 p.m. in India, right, subtract 5 hour 30 minutes and you get the Greenwich Mean Time. So what will be the time right now in Greenwich? The time right now would be how much? Let me know. It would be 9:30 a.m. Are we able to get this? All of us are we able to understand this? The case of the time zone? Yes? Okay. Now, once we have understood this, I can't understand. Okay, which is the portion not understandable? That is the Greenwich Mean Time or the case of the time zone in itself? What is the portion? Do let me know so that I can summarize this. Understand one basic thing, case of the time. Understand one basic thing, okay. When we consider planet Earth, how 9:30, that is something which is not understood, okay. That is where CSAT skills now are tested. And we find CSAT very tough, isn't it? Okay. So here, if we consider the longitudes, now let's suppose UK is present here, India is present here. Now, will both of them experience sunrise and sunset at the same time? Will that happen? No. Both of them will not experience sunrise or the sunset at the same time, isn't it? Both of them will experience sunrise as well at a different time, sunset also at a different time. India will experience sunrise earlier. Why? Because planet Earth rotates from west to east direction. India will experience sunrise earlier, right? So whatever is the time at Greenwich, what is known as the Greenwich Mean Time, now there I will have to add this because India will be ahead in time as compared to Greenwich because sunrise has happened earlier here. So it is earlier by 5.5 hours. Okay, right. So if let's suppose in Greenwich, it is right now 9:30 a.m. Now, if from 9:30 a.m. you add 5 hours first. Let's suppose I add 5 hours. So 9:30 a.m. plus 3 hours will be 12:30 p.m., right? Plus 2 hours will be, so, or if this is a complicated bit of maths, so can I write plus 5.5 hours? Can I write this as 9:30 a.m. plus 3.5 hours plus 2 hours? Can I write this? I hope everybody is comfortable with this. 5.5 hours can be explained as 3.5 hours plus 2 hours. Yes. Now, what is 9:30 a.m. plus 3.5 hours? So 9:30 a.m. plus 3 hour will be 12:30 p.m. plus half an hour, 1 p.m. plus another 2 hours, 3 p.m. Are we able to arrive at this conclusion? Yes or no? Or no? Samandeshwar, are we able to understand this? How the time difference has been arrived at? Are we? Okay, good. Anyone having any doubts in this? Nice, sir. So what should I repeat? Should I repeat from the first topic itself? And then if anyone else has a network issue, then okay. If anyone else then has a network issue, should I then again repeat from the first point itself? No? So kindly take a look at the recordings in that particular case. Okay? Compare IST versus US time. Why did you divide 3.5 and 2? To help you understand easier so that you are able to arrive at the calculation easier. That is why I divided 5.5 into 3.5 plus 2. There is no particular scientific logic behind this. This is a case of a simple, pure arithmetic. Okay? Right. This is clear? Now, why basically time zone is why time zone is selected as 83.5 degree only? Why not some other longitude in our case? That is because it roughly transitions or moves through the central portion of the country. If you consider the left or the east to west extent, this mostly, not exactly the center, mostly is in the central portion. That is why you follow this time zone in our country. Okay. Now, in this particular case, here, if up till here we have understood, now in this particular case, if you consider the region of Arunachal, and you consider the region of Gujarat. Now, Arunachal will receive sunrise earlier. Gujarat will receive sunrise later. Isn't it? All of them, whether you are in Arunachal, whether you are in Assam, whether you are in Bengal, whether you are in Bihar, whether you are in UP, whether you are in Delhi, whether you are in Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, anywhere you are. Right now, the time for you is 3:30 p.m. only. Because we follow the time which is followed as per the standard meridian, Indian standard meridian. Isn't it? But having said that, let's suppose today in the morning, if you consider the time duration of 5 a.m. or maybe, let's be more considerate, 6 a.m. Now, Gujarat would have received sunrise. No. But Arunachal would have received sunrise. isn't it? Gujarat, no sunrise. There's a time difference of close to around 2 hours between Arunachal and Gujarat, right? 1.5 to 2 hours. So Arunachal would have received sunrise. But then working time duration in offices, in administrative buildings, in government offices, everywhere, what is the working time? Let's suppose 9 to 5, right? So by the time of 9 a.m., so Gujarat, let's suppose sunrise happens at 7 a.m. Arunachal, let's suppose the sunrise happens at 5 a.m. itself. Now, in the working time window of 9 to 5, a person who is in Arunachal Pradesh would have already been experiencing sunrise for 4 hours. Sunrise would have happened at 5 a.m. only. He has to go to office at 9 a.m., right? And then the person in Gujarat, sunrise would have happened at 7 a.m. only. And he has to report to office at 9 a.m. Are you getting this? So basically, the duration of sunrise and sunset in different parts, east to west, they vary. Because of the extent of the country, the sunrise will happen first in the case of the eastern part of the country, and sunrise will happen much later in the part of the western part of the country. Are we getting this? So, in order to have an efficient utilization of time, that is where you come across the concept of what is known as the daylight saving time. I will write it down so that you are able to understand this. So when we talk about the case of the east to west extent of the country, so what is the concept of daylight saving time? This is where I want you to make running notes as well, guys, if possible. Okay. So, a country, let's suppose we consider a large country. This is the standard meridian. Standard meridian. Right? Okay. Now, if I have two different places, A and B, if let's suppose the distance between them is 2,000, 3,000 kilometers, okay? Now, let me name this as, what is the name that you would want of the standard meridian? SM, standard meridian for that region. Okay, that is the standard meridian. Now here, if you consider this, Loki, not everybody will be able to recall with the name Loki, right? So if you would have said Thor, maybe I would have granted that wish, but Loki is a bit devious for that matter. So here, A and B, both of them will follow the time as per the standard meridian, isn't it? A and B both follow the time as per standard meridian. Yes. However, B will receive sunrise earlier. B receives sunrise much earlier than A and also experiences sunset earlier than A. Yes or no? Right? Now, both of them are following the time as per the standard meridian. Both of them. Now, if B keeps following time as per standard meridian, now in standard meridian also, sunrise is going to happen earlier than B or later than B. What do you think? At the standard meridian, sunrise will be experienced earlier than B or later than B? Later than B. This is your position B. So at the standard meridian, sunrise will happen later, isn't it? Are we able to get this or no? Not able to understand, Om Prakash? I hope we are able to understand this. That why sunrise will happen later than B? Yes? Okay. Pari, not understood? Not understood this case? Basically, the entire planet is rotating from west to east. So B will be experiencing, if let's suppose this is the sun, right? If suppose this is your region that I am talking about, A, B. Okay. The entire planet is rotating like this, west to east. If this is the sun, which will receive sunrise earlier? A or B? The planet is rotating like this. Pavan and Pari. B will receive sunrise earlier. Okay. If my standard meridian is here, which will receive sunrise earlier? Standard meridian or B? Which will receive sunrise earlier? B will still receive sunrise earlier. Isn't it? Are we able to understand this? So B will experience sunrise earlier than even the standard meridian, right? So B will have sunrise earlier than a standard meridian, sunset also earlier than standard meridian. Simple concept it is, that how the planet rotates, the portion facing the sun will be experiencing sunrise, the portion opposing the sun will experience night time. Everybody is comfortable with this? Okay. So here, basically, if B keeps following the time as per the standard meridian, right? In standard meridian also, the sunrise happens later than B and sunset happens later than B. Experiences sunrise and sunset later than B. The standard meridian will experience sunrise and sunset later than B. So if B keeps following the time as per the standard meridian, vital daylight hours that is when the sun is shining, when you have the sun rays available, vital daylight hours get wasted, isn't it? I hope we are able to understand. because you will report to work when already lot of sunrise or the daytime has passed, right? By the time that you come back from work, it is already night time. So that is why, in order to maximize, in order to maximize the daylight, clocks in the local region, that is B, in local region, are adjusted. That is local region, which means what? Only at B. Okay. At B, the local region will be, the clock will be adjusted. Okay, not getting the second time, the second point. This point, this is the second point. This point or this point, which one? If B. Okay. See, right now in India, even if you go to Arunachal Pradesh, what is the time that your clock will show? 3:30 p.m. Even if you are in Gujarat, the time will be as per what? As per the standard meridian. Yes. All our clocks are adjusted as per the standard meridian in our country. All our clocks are adjusted as per the standard meridian. Now, standard meridian in our country passes through the region here. Now, it will receive sunrise at the same time as Arunachal Pradesh, later than Arunachal Pradesh, or earlier than Arunachal Pradesh. What do you think? Not able to understand, Saksham? Not able to understand? Understand. If you're not able to understand, do let me know. Sunrise in the region of standard meridian. Where will sunrise happen first? In this portion of the country or in the region of Allahabad? Always in Arunachal Pradesh, isn't it? Always in Arunachal Pradesh, sunrise will happen. Then sunrise will happen at the standard meridian. We are following the time as per standard meridian. We are not following the time as per Arunachal Pradesh or Gujarat. We are following across the country, whatever is the time in the standard meridian, isn't it? So here, when I say that if basically B keeps following the time as per the standard meridian, vital daylight hours in B get wasted? Yes or no? Because they have gone to work after 4 to 5 hours of sunrise has happened. They could have utilized that period of time. So, in order to basically make maximum productivity in the local area, that is where the clocks and the watches are adjusted. They are advanced, right? So when it is, let's suppose 4 p.m. in the rest of the country, there it is 5 p.m. When it is 6 a.m. In rest of the country, there it is 7 a.m. So that basically they can utilize the case of the hours and the daylight hours. That is what is referred to as the daylight saving time. That is the concept of it. Okay. So that is this adjustment, local adjustment or localized adjustment of clocks is daylight saving time. saving time. Yes, Shraddha. Now, have patience. This used to be very prominent across the world when availability of electrical energy was less, right? Light bulbs were less, and majority of the jobs were labor intensive. You had to go out to work. That is where it was very prominent across the world. But now it is becoming less prominent because artificial lights allow you productivity in the factories, in the various different industries, even after sunset. So that is why in India, it is not followed. In India, it is not followed. Except one area, that is in the region of Assam. Because in Assam, you have the, and not also in the entirety of the government offices, etc. in Assam. In Assam, where you have the tea gardens, you cannot work in the tea gardens at night. You can only work in the tea gardens during the day, isn't it? So you need to utilize the sunlight to the maximum possible amount. So that is why in Assam, you have the chai bagan time. Chai bagan means tea garden. That's it. In other places in the country, it is not followed. So what is the time in Arunachal Pradesh right now? 3:45. What is the time in Gujarat right now? 3:45. Everywhere the time is same. Okay. However, it is still followed in countries of higher latitudes, which are present. India is almost present at equator. So we don't have much of a variation in the duration of daytime and nighttime, isn't it? Let me give you an example for those of us who are not aware about it. Matangi, what is it that you are not getting? Which portion is not? Please repeat daylight saving time. The entire concept of daylight saving time, you want to be repeated? Okay. The time adjustment. Which time? Okay. Okay. So we are confused in this. Please keep one thing in mind. In India, no concept of daylight saving time is followed. Saving time is followed. Time in Arunachal is same as the time in Gujarat. Everywhere, islands, Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, everywhere is same as time in Gujarat. And what is that time? That is the time as per standard meridian. As per standard meridian. Passing through 82 degree, 30 minutes east. Are we able to understand this portion? Mathangi, are we able to understand this? Everyone, that in India there is no concept of daylight saving time except the case of Chai Bagan time. Okay? Are we able to understand this? Right. Now, what is the concept of daylight saving time? So, in many of the countries, what you experience is that, see, let's suppose this is the entirety of the region. This is the entirety of the region. Okay? Planet Earth rotates from east to west. Are we able to understand this? Let's suppose, basically, planet rotates, not let's suppose, but in reality, planet rotates from west to east. Now, B will receive sunrise, let's suppose at 4:30 a.m. Okay. A will receive sunrise at, let's suppose, 6:30 a.m. Okay. Now, B will have its sunset at, let's suppose, 4:30 p.m. A, let's suppose, will have sunset at 6:30 or 7 p.m. Now, for a job, let's suppose outside, if you have to go out for a job outside in the hills. Now, if the job timing is 9 to 5 across the country, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. across the country. Now, you cannot have the job timing in such a way where you are working after dark outside in general, after dark outside, but you have wasted your time early in the morning. You had sunrise earlier. For a person in let's suppose the place A, sunset has happened at 6:30 p.m. So that person is still working in the availability of daylight. But the person who is present or who is living in B, that person is not working in daylight. That person is wasting the daylight. Are we able to understand this? That here, because the sunrise and the sunset has happened earlier, so they are not basically able to utilize the daylight to that extent. Matangi, are we able to understand that or no? Because I want to understand where the problem is. Do let me know. Understood? No. Understood. Okay. Is it the case that out of peer pressure, we are saying understood? Or if you have not understood, please do let me know. So what I was saying was that the person at B is not able to utilize the daylight to the maximum amount. So what they do is, in general, in other countries, higher latitude countries, European nations, etc., is that during the summer time, they will advance their clocks. Right? If the sunrise happens earlier, they will advance their clocks and they will make it, let's suppose, 5:30 a.m. plus 1 hour or plus 2, depending. So that when the rest of the country is experiencing 4:30 a.m., their clocks will say it is 5:30 a.m. so that they can report to office earlier, they can utilize the daytime in a better way. This is just to utilize the daytime. Okay? This is just to utilize the daylight. So the localized clock adjustment that you carry out in order to utilize the daylight. That's it. That is the daylight saving time. And then again, once the season passes, you readjust the clock once again. Okay, that's it. Are we able to understand this now, everyone? Mathangi, are we able to understand this? Okay. You have many countries. For example, almost all the North European nations still follow the concept of the daylight saving time. Why? Because here, when we talk about the North European countries, you see, during the summer season, even the Western region, summer season, sunrise will happen at around maybe 5:30 or 6 a.m. Right? 5:30 a.m. Sunset will happen during the summer at roughly around, it can be depending upon where you are, it can happen at around 9 p.m. also. Okay, that is when the sunset will happen. 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. also sometimes the sunset happens, depending upon higher latitude that you go to. So you will have the duration of sunset. Now, during the winters, what will happen is, during the winters, the sunrise will be adjusted. The sunset will also happen much earlier. That is because of the location or the tilt of planet Earth. Okay, that is because of the tilt of planet Earth. So here, what you have was the planet Earth is tilted on its axis at an angle of 23.5 degrees. Right? It is tilted on its axis. Now, if you consider any region, this is, let's suppose, the location of the sun. Okay. So, if let's suppose sun will provide sunlight to how much? Half of the planet Earth will be lighted by the sun. Half of the planet Earth will be lighted by the sun. So this portion will experience daytime. This portion will experience nighttime. Isn't it? Now a region which is present here, it will spend more time in the day, very limited time in the night. So that is why the sunrise and the sunset variations, when they happen, you go for the daylight saving time in order to utilize it can happen in winter also, it can happen in summer also. That is why daylight saving time is done. Okay. So in a brief revised concept or a recap, daylight saving time, what it is? Saving time is basically localized adjustment of clock. Adjustment of clocks. For what? For better utilization of sunlight. Clear? This much we will be able to understand. They generally have a date, Pratima. The countries, they generally have a date. The springtime is when they do that. Okay. When the daylight savings, they start kicking in. Okay. In very large regions in Canada also, you observe this. If it's not followed in India, then why are we studying it? Volcanoes don't erupt in India. Do we study volcanoes or not, Anurag? Right? When we start with the case of climatology, next day you will ask me what is polar vortex. Doesn't occur in India. Isn't it? So do we study that or not? We do study it. World War II did not happen in India. Do you study about the Germans and the Nazis or not? I hope you got the answer. I can go ahead along with that. Okay? I mean in Indian geography. Okay. So do one thing, Anurag. You give me the text of what should be studied in Indian geography. Send me a list. From tomorrow, we will follow the Anurag time zone. Right? Will that suffice? Why we are studying it is because when you talk about the case of the standard meridian, whenever you talk about the case of the standard meridian, it is important for you to understand the chai bagan time. It is important for you to understand the concept of the daylight saving time. And in Indian context, you will be able to understand it with the context of Arunachal Pradesh and Gujarat. When we talk about the global aspect, that is where it is very, very difficult to materialize or theorize this. That is where the candidates find it very difficult. That is why I did um, dare to talk about the daylight saving time. In case anyone is offended, so I do humbly apologize for that. Okay. Now, how is it that a standard meridian is chosen? Standard meridian generally is something which passes through the central portion of the country. 82.5 degree is roughly around the central portion of the country. That is why it is chosen as the standard meridian. Why Greenwich Mean Time is chosen, or the portion of the longitude passing through Greenwich was chosen as the prime meridian? This was in the era of the Eurocentrism in geography, where Europe was the center of the world, considered to be the center of the world. And basically, at that point of time, you had, in fact, the requirement of a reference time to be followed across the world, right? What should be the reference time which should be followed across the different areas of the world? Now, at that point of time, the Postmaster General of London said that the longitude which passes through the Royal Observatory would be a very famed observatory of astronomy in those days. So the longitude which would pass through the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, that would be considered to be the standard meridian. All the time zones or all the longitudes will be referred with reference to the this particular longitude passing through Royal Observatory in Greenwich. So since that point of time, the Greenwich Mean Time was considered to be the reference time. Then you had the international conference, which was held in the Meridian Conference, which was held in 1872, which further officially uh, made this as a kind of a prime meridian and the standard reference zone. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now, the standard meridian passes through 5 different states. It passes through the region of Uttar Pradesh, some part of Madhya Pradesh, some part of Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. That is where the standard meridian passes through. Okay, now the Tropic of Cancer, however, does pass through more number of states. So when we say Tropic of Cancer, so Tropic of Cancer passes through the states of Gujarat, Rajasthan, okay, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Tripura, and Mizoram. These are the regions through which the Tropic of Cancer passes through. Okay. Now, overall, when you take a look at the political map of the country, you should be aware, first of all, you should take a look at the atlas. You should be aware at least of your state and the boundary regions around your state. That is something that is your prime duty. Other after that, look at the surrounding state. Let's suppose if you belong from Karnataka, then which are the states bound having a boundary of Karnataka? Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Goa. Okay, these are the various different states. So around 6 states are there having a boundary of Karnataka. Then Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Karnataka, and Goa. Again, around 5 states. So, like that, do take a look into the various different states and the boundaries that they share. Okay. Now, you have certain states which share multiple international boundaries as well. Now, many of us, we have as a candidate, we have a preconceived notion that international boundary only means the land boundary, because we have grown up from our childhood days watching Border and Sunny Deol movies, where he simply dismantles the barbed wire and crosses into enemy terrain. So we think that is what international border has been, right? So I don't fault you guys for this, right? That is the aura of Sunny Deol himself. So it is quite natural. But when we talk about the international border is not restricted only to the land areas. International border extends even to the maritime domain. Okay. So from the region around Maharashtra, there also you will have an international border. I know it is very difficult to believe so. That how come international border in the sea? Sea doesn't have any boundary. But think about it, right? If there is no international border in Maharashtra, then can someone from Sudan or Somalia directly enter into the region of Maharashtra? No, there are international borders everywhere. Okay, so that is the case of the international border. Please don't get into the conception or don't have this preconceived notion. International border means India, Pakistan, rest of them, I don't care. No. With Pakistan also, we have a maritime border as well. That is in this region of the world. We have a maritime border with Pakistan here also. Okay. So now is the time to get elevated and uplifted from the movie as your prime educator. So when we talk about these international borders, land-based borders that we have, that is almost more than 15,000 kilometers of land border. More than 15,000 kilometers of land border. The longest land border that India shares with any international country, that is Bangladesh. With Bangladesh, we basically have more than 4,000 kilometers of land border with Bangladesh. Shortest land border that we have is this portion with Afghanistan. Okay, that is the shortest land border that we have. Longest land border with Bangladesh. Now, there are states, by the way, which share their boundary with multiple countries. Okay, more than one or two countries. For example, take a look at Sikkim. Sikkim domestically will share its border only with West Bengal, but internationally, Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, right? Take a look at Arunachal Pradesh. Domestically, it will share its border with Assam as well as Nagaland, but internationally, Bhutan also, China or Tibet, and Myanmar also, right? So they share the border with 3 countries. Then West Bengal. West Bengal will share its border with Bangladesh, Nepal, as well as Bhutan, right? So these are the states which will share the border with multiple countries out there. Okay. Kashmir will share its border with only one. That is Pakistan. That's it. Right? When we talk about Ladakh, however, Ladakh will share its border with Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Tibet. Okay, so that is the case of the three borders, international borders. Now, here, this is our international land border. Land border. There is international maritime border as well, which now, as per the revised list, our coastal territory or the coastline is more than 11,000 kilometers now. Earlier, it was considered to be 7,000 kilometers, but now it is more than 11,000 kilometers. Okay, so out of that, the Indo-Pakistan border is 3,323 kilometers. Right? That is 3,300. We consider Tibet excluded from China? Absolutely no. Right. It is one China policy that we are adherent to. They are not adherent to one India policy, though. Now, Indo-Pakistan border, 3,300 kilometers. Indo-Bangladesh, 4,096 kilometers. Indo-Myanmar, 1,643 kilometers. Indo-Bhutan, 699 kilometers. Indo-Nepal, 1,700 kilometers. Indo-China, 3,488. So basically, yes, it is 3,488 kilometer, which is larger than India-Pakistan. Indo-Afghanistan, 106 kilometers. This is the shortest international border. Okay. Longest international border you should know. Sir, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, 3,000 kilometers, but with Bangladesh, it's 4,000 plus. Sir, I know world is not fair, my dear. What do we do? Ideally, I would have wanted Kashmir to Kanyakumari length to be larger. But we live in a world where Kashmir to Kanyakumari is only 3,200 kilometers. Bangladesh border is 4,000 kilometers. Now, why is it so? Other than thinking about the sadness of this, why is it so? That is because here you are considering the linear distance, displacement. In this case, you are considering like this. Okay. So, if you consider this distance, it might be, let's suppose, I'm just giving an example, 100 kilometer. But here, if you add on to all of this, it will easily become 200, 300 or 400 kilometer. Okay, so that is the difference between distance and displacement. Okay, clear? Why did you say Tibet and not China? I apologize for this, but basically that is the region of Tibet, that is the region of China, which is also referred to as Tibet. Okay. Yes. India still sometimes mentions it as Tibet. Okay. Clear? Right. So India shares land border with 7 countries. Okay. And basically totaling around 15,000 kilometer. Specific length of the international border with each of the country is Bangladesh, China, Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bhutan, and Afghanistan. But the region of Afghanistan, that is basically sharing a border with a region which is under Pakistani control, the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So that is where it is considered to be a part of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, but we consider it as Indian territory, so we consider it as our border. What is the method they have followed? Earlier, what used to happen, why there is a revision is basically, see, if let's suppose I take a larger scale, right? I draw a country's coastline like this. But if I zoom it in, then this region in itself, it will not be a straight line. It will be more like this, the coastal area. If I zoom this further in, then it will also have a greater amount of inundation and a greater amount of variation like this. So it is a matter of the scale. The earlier we used to have a broader reference because we did not have such great or precise satellite imagery. Now we have so. So that is why now we are able to zoom in and we are able to have the precise idea of the coastline. Okay. Now, in the coastal area, basically, when we talk about the international border, so coastal area, you have what is known as the baseline. That is the shoreline or the coastline. Now, any water body inside it, like the harbors, bays, estuaries, etc., they are considered internal waters. The state police, etc., will be deployed there. Then, up till 12 nautical miles, it is considered to be the territorial sea. Up till here, your national jurisdiction exists up till the region of the territorial sea. Then another 12 nautical miles, that is considered to be contiguous zone. Okay, so overall 24 nautical miles, that is where you can have some amount of policing, not much. Up till around 12 nautical miles, you have maximum control. Okay, from the baseline up till 200 nautical miles, that is your exclusive economic zone. This is where you have all the rights for mineral extraction and fisheries, etc. You have got the rights. So that is the case of the exclusive economic zone. I have provided you with the notes associated with this. Internal waters, what are internal waters? Located landwards of the baseline from which the territorial sea is measured. Territorial sea, here the coastal state enjoys full sovereignty, right? And the rights of the coastal states, they can enforce criminal and civil laws, regulate marine scientific research, control fisheries, environmental protection, exercise security. Then you have the contiguous zone. So here, the state may prevent and punish violations related to custom laws. Some amount of control is there, but not much. So that is the case of the coastal waters. Internal waters can be anything in to any distance. And what is internal water? In case we are not clear with this, so let's suppose a coastline is India's coastline. Let's suppose is like this. So when you hear the term baseline, here you saw the term baseline. So what is the baseline? This will be considered to be the baseline. Okay, this will be your baseline. This will be considered to be internal waters. If this is the land area, this is the sea. These will be your internal waters. Is this clear? Now, here, up till 12 nautical miles, you will have. I was supposed to teach this yesterday itself, but yesterday the anger level was so high that I don't think even Parliament would have functioned at that stage. Today, I think it is much more okay. Now, I hope you understand why A.O. Hume helped establish the Indian National Congress at that point of time. That was the pressure valve technique. So, okay, so this is the case of the territorial sea. National waterways are different. National waterways will be present in the canals and the rivers, right? That is what national waterway is. National waterway is numbered, just like your national highways are numbered. National waterways are also numbered. Okay, you have National Waterway 1 moving from Prayagraj all the way to the region of Haldia. So that is your national waterway. It is very different from the internal waters. What is not nautical? It is nautical, knots, nautical mile, nautical miles. This is 1.8 kilometers. If any two countries are much more closer than even 12 nautical miles, then you have the case of the Thalvik principle in certain cases, which is followed. It is defined as per the UN clause, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas. That is the case of UN clause. Okay. Not able to understand internal water. Okay. Which calculation from mainland India or from island? Wherever you have the case of the land of the country, from there, 12 nautical miles. Okay, I hope you understand that when we talk about India, this distance is thousands of kilometers, right? So here you will have a separate territorial water in this region, a separate territorial water in this region. In between them, here you will have international waters. International waters. Here also, you will have international water, and wherever Lakshadweep is present, that will be your territorial water. That is why the countries, they basically want to establish these islands. Okay, all the dispute in South China Sea is to establish these islands. Artificial islands they are establishing so that they can claim that entire region as their own to increase the territory, right? I hope we understand that. Now, the internal waters is not clear. Now, let's suppose you consider a land area which is like this, a coastal land area which is like this. Okay. Now, it will have a baseline. The baseline will be this one. This will be the baseline. Okay. This is your baseline. It is based upon, this is your land area. It is based upon the outermost projection of the land that you have. That is your baseline. This water body will be considered as internal waters. Internal waters. All of this will be internal water. Are we getting this now? All of this will be internal waters. Okay. Are we able to understand this? What is internal water? Okay. Now, after this, basically, when we take a look at oil rigs can be present in either of the cases. EEZ also, internal waters also. Now, if we take a look at the shortest boundary here, the shortest boundary is the one which we share with Afghanistan, and that is through this portion of the land of Afghanistan. It is known as the panhandle shaped land. The reason being that it has got a shape like a panhandle. Just like when you have a pan, when you take a look at a pan, a broad base, a thin handle. So this portion of Afghanistan is very, very thin. So this is basically what is referred to as the Wakhan corridor. Wakhan corridor historically has always been very vital. Why? Because all around it, to the north, to the south, you have very high mountains. So very difficult for the traders and the travelers to move through. They have always been able to move through this region of Wakhan corridor. Okay? Bay of Bengal, Andaman Sea aren't under India's control. The entirety of it, no. No. We are not able to understand the internal waters. Okay. Basically, if you consider the map of India, if you consider the peninsular map of India. Now, the baseline will be here. This will be the baseline. Right. Now, if let's suppose here in one region you have, let's suppose, got an estuary, a harbor, a bay, anything. Let's suppose. Now, this is your baseline. So, this will be your part of internal water. This will be the part of internal water. In this particular case, in the region of Gujarat, it will be like this. That will be the baseline. Obviously, the country will have control over internal waters. Who will have control over internal waters? If basically, when we talk about this internal water, do you think China will have control over internal waters of India? Do you think Pakistan will have control over internal waters of India? No, absolutely not. When we talk about the territorial waters are 12 nautical miles from the coastline. 12 nautical miles. Till there, the country has absolute control. Till there, the country has absolute control. That is the case of the territorial water. Territorial water. Are we able to understand this now? What is internal water? Nidhi, are we able to understand this, Nidhi? Yes or no? Please let me know. The person who asked the question generally goes silent after that. Yes. Okay. Can we move ahead now? Because if you think about it, when we talk about the case of internal water, can it be constant? Can this be the constant that here also the estuary will have the same depth, the coastline will have the same depth as is the case here? Can it ever occur, my dear? Can it ever happen that here also the land will be of the same depth? And apply that very rare commodity, that is your logic, if you can. If let's suppose here the land is like this, here the land is like this, right? Now I have my baseline as here. Who will come and control? Will UN come and control this? Or is it the case that US will come and govern this? It will be our own territory. It will be our own waters. Are you able to understand this or not? Right. Now, this portion we'll take a look at it separately under the portion of the mapping. This is the case of the Siachen Glacier and the portion of the uh, line of control. And now we come to the case of the physiography, the India's physiography. Now, when we say physiography of India, physiography means what? Physiography basically refers to the variation in terms of the terrain, variations in terms of the topography. Now, what is terrain? What is topography? So basically, somewhere you have hills, somewhere you have plains, somewhere you have depressions, right? So that is really the case of the physiography. Okay. So when we talk about the physiography of India, we basically study north to south, east to west, what are the variations which do exist. Because in our country, if you take a look at it, to the north, we have the Himalayas, then you have the plains here, then you have the northern plains, then you have the plateau region, and then you have the coastal area. So you have a wide variety, and then you also have the island regions. Okay, so you have a wide variety of features across the country. Now, in this particular case, when we talk about the physiographic classification, we will study the various different types of physiography here. So, first of all, across the country, please understand that when you consider the country's physiography, you have to consider from here up till here, from here to here, along with that, the islands. Now, islands are also one of the natural assets that India has. For a long period of time, when it came to islands, we had a very lackadaisical attitude, or rather, we had a very um, an attitude of avoidance, ignorance. We would never value the islands. Okay, we would never value the islands. We would always keep the islands as a kind of an administrative burden. The government basically had the bureaucracy rather had a mindset that islands, they take our resources, they require resources, but they don't give us anything in return. So they thought of it as a kind of a liability for a longest period of time. However, lately, for the past 2.5 decades now, Indian islands, particularly Andaman Nicobar, they have experienced a lot of investment. Okay, there is a lot of investment which is being done, but the critics argue it is not still to the same amount that other countries in the world are doing or they are planning to do. Now, here, basically, if you take a look at the Andaman Nicobar Islands, the one which is present in the region of the Bay of Bengal, now it has two parts. One is the Andaman group of islands, another is the Nicobar group of islands. Okay. Now, in the case of Andaman group of islands, here you have the only active volcano of India that is present here, that is in the region of the Barren Islands. Barren Islands. That is the only active volcano which is present in India. Now, Andaman and Nicobar group of islands, these are your Nicobar group of islands. Nicobar group. Now, Andaman and Nicobar group of islands, they are separated by what a water body, what is known as the 10-degree channel. A channel is a narrow water body. It is not very wide. It is a narrow water body. It is named as the 10-degree channel because the 10-degree latitude passes through this region. That is why the name 10-degree channel. The 10-degree latitude passes through here. Latitude passes through this region. Okay. Now, in the case of Lakshadweep, many small islands out there. Now, Andaman Nicobar Islands, by the way, we'll take a look into it as well. It is volcanic in origin. A strait is much narrower. A channel is a bit wider. Volcanic in origin. Okay. Almost all the islands are volcanic in origin. Now, in the case of Lakshadweep, you will observe that only 11 islands are inhabited. That is, only 11 islands are where people are living. Now here, you will find that you have got the 9-degree channel. That is, the 9-degree latitude passes through it, and it separates the Minicoy from the rest of the islands. Minicoy is the largest island present in Lakshadweep. So Minicoy from the rest of the islands are separated through here. Okay. Now, after this, basically, when we take a look at the physiography, we need to know the physiographic classification overall across the entirety of the country. So physiography of an area is basically the land variation that you observe. The land variation that you observe. The variation in terms of the hills, the plateaus, etc., mountains, plains, coastline. So that is the variation which is referred to as the physiography. What is also known as the topographical variations that is hills, plains, plateaus, etc. Okay, those are your topographical variations. Now, India overall as a country can be divided into 6 different physiographical divisions. As a country, 6 different physiographical divisions. That is the overall classification of the country that you can take a look into. One is the northern and the northeastern mountains. That is the Himalayan stretch. That is your northern and the northeastern mountains, the northern plains, peninsular plateau, the Indian desert, which is also known as the Thar Desert. Okay, the coastal plains, the islands, all of them. So we'll study each one of them one by one, and we will study the formation and the origin of this. So once we understand that, then the rest of the portion of Indian geography becomes a derivative of that. Okay, so we'll study each one of them in detail. Starting first of all with the Himalayas, the tallest mountains of the world. Across the world, you rarely find 7,000-meter plus peaks. Himalayas alone themselves have lot of these 7,000 plus and 8,000 plus peaks as well. The planet, if it has got a challenge, Himalayas are that challenge. Himalayas for the longest period of time has served as a natural boundary between India and the region to the north, right, and the region to the east. They have always served as a kind of a barrier. When you had in the Middle Ages and the middle century, the Huns, you would have heard about the Mongols and the Huns, right? So the marauding tribes of the Huns under Attila the Hun, when they were going around pilfering and basically looting all the areas, they could not come to India because of the barrier that was the Himalayas. When the Mongols got very powerful, firstly under the rule of the Genghis Khan and later on under Kublai Khan, they were looking at newer lands to conquer. Himalayas stood as a barrier. Remember, in history, you would have studied that, or you would study that Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he very famously launched an expedition of soldiers, what was known as the Karachi expedition of soldiers to explore the land and the passageway through the Himalayas. It could not uh, happen. Out of 10,000, only 10 survived, right? Because by that point of time, you had the traders and the travelers who had told the Indian rulers of the wealth which lied in China as well. So they wanted to explore the path north. But Himalayas have been a barrier. For the longest period of time, it had puzzled the scientists. It had puzzled the geographers that how come such a large mountain can be created? How did it come into existence? What was the purpose of that? Or what was the process of that? How did it come? Right. Iltutmish stopped Khan, but had the Himalayas not been there, then the Mongols would not have been forced to channelize their attack only through one region. Right. So that is where they could have basically simply flooded the entire region after. That was the mode of attacks that the Mongols followed, isn't it? That was that is what even the Huns followed. So they would keep on attacking and ramming through multiple different places. You would expect an attack from here, and they would attack from somewhere else. And that is where they succeeded to some extent in certain cases as well. So it was the case of the Himalayas which offered the barricade. Now, in the case of the Himalayas, this puzzle which was always there, that how come you basically had such a large mountain range which got created. It was in the 1900s where some progress and some studies were made. And based on what? Based on the evidence of rocks on the Himalayas. So if you consider the region of the Himalayas, now these are very high mountains. Now in these high mountains, you find rocks such as limestone. Now, limestone is a rock, which we'll study in physical geography later. Limestone is a rock which can be formed only under marine conditions, in regions where you have shallow sea, right? So, limestone is a rock, is a sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock formed in shallow sea. Okay. Then other than that, you also have the case of some of the fossils in the rocks. Fossils. Fossils of what? Fossils of marine organisms. So that is when the geographers came to a conclusion that this lofty mountain that we see as the Himalayas right now, at one point of time, they would have been an ocean floor. That is how the Himalayas have been created. So that is when the theories started coming in about the formation of the Himalayas. So when we talk about the formation of the Himalayas, So there you have to understand some of the basic aspects. How did the Himalayas get created? So basically, across the planet Earth, you have what is known as the case of the lithosphere, right? Lithosphere is the portion of the crust and some part of the upper mantle, that is lithosphere. It is divided into different subparts, that is known as plates. Okay, so across the case of the planet Earth, when you consider planet Earth, so you have the crust, mantle, and the core, isn't it? You have the crust, then you have the mantle, and then you have the core. So the crust and some part of the upper mantle, this portion together is known as lithosphere. Lithosphere. That is crust plus solid upper mantle. Okay. Now across the planet Earth, this lithosphere is divided into multiple smaller portions, including oceans, lands, etc. Lithosphere is divided into multiple smaller portions. Okay. Those are known as plates. Plates. So, lithosphere is subdivided into smaller components known as plates. Okay. Now these plates, they tend to move because of the internal forces of planet Earth. You don't need to go into the depth of that right now. Because of the internal forces of planet Earth, these plates, they tend to move, right? So here, basically, you have the presence of, prior to the formation of the Himalayas, you had the presence of the Indian plate as well as the Eurasian plate. So what happened was that earlier you had the planet, we have the plate tectonic theory associated with that, yes. You had the presence of a plate here, okay guys, let me tell this for the final time. Okay, let me tell this for the final time, because from yesterday I have been entertaining a lot of comments about it. This is how we are going to go ahead. First, we are going to cover Indian geography right now. In Indian geography, what is important, what is not important, we will cover that. For that, you need to trust me. Okay. I can assure you that we are basically going to cover everything which is required for the examination. After that, the case of physical geography will be explained. If any portion is not understood, then do let me know. If you have a feedback regarding how the course structure should be, course flow should be, this is not a kind of a participation that I am asking out of you. Okay? That whether earlier history should be done, earlier physical geography should be done, right now that portion should be done. I'm not asking any kind of input regarding that. So please, these kind of inputs, if we have a great urgency, write a mail. Otherwise, write it in a piece of paper, fold that piece of paper, and keep it somewhere. Okay? Have I made myself clear? Yes or no? Any doubt regarding this? That this should be done first, that should be done first? Get it out of the system right now. Or define the course schedule. What should be the course? What should be the kind of content? You define it, tell me, and tell it to all the educators, and all the educators should follow that. If that is what you want. Is that the case? Trust the process. If there is any doubt, do ask. I have been entertaining doubts since yesterday. I will be entertaining doubts going ahead as well. But this kind of untoward comments are not going to be accepted. Okay? I hope I have made myself duly and amply clear. Now, when we consider this case of the formation of Himalayas, now in this particular case, formation of Himalayas is something which is quite old, quite a very old process for that matter. It started somewhere around 65 million years ago. But then the process of it started long time back. You basically had one of these plates. That was your Eurasian plate. The present-day region of China, portion of Russia, right? The portion of Afghanistan, the Central Asia, all of those. That is the case which was composed of in the larger Eurasian plate. So you had this Eurasian plate which was present. Okay? You had other land masses as well nearby, but we are not concerned with that as of now. And you had the Indian plate which was present here. Indian plate. Now, the Indian plate for a long period of time was present near Antarctica. So it was actually attached to Antarctica, you know. That is why in India you will still find in many of the places, for example, in the region of the Godavari River Basin, Mahanadi River Basin, Damodar River Basin, in all these regions, you will still find evidence of glacial deposits, right? Presently in India, these areas don't have glaciers, but you have the evidence of the glacier to be moving in that area because that region was present in the area closer to Antarctica. Now, here, India started moving northwards here towards its present position somewhere around 150 million years ago. 150 million years ago, India started moving northwards. At that point of time, it started moving towards the region of the Eurasian plate. And in between them, you had the giant ocean, which was referred to as the Tethys Sea. There was this ocean, which was referred to as the Tethys Sea. Okay. So India started moving northwards, and Eurasian plate was moving slightly southwards. But the rate of movement was very different. Eurasian plate was moving southwards at a rate of around 2 centimeter per year. Indian plate was moving northwards at a massive rate of around 15 centimeter per year. One of the fastest moving plates anywhere. And but in between them, you had the Tethys Sea. Now that is where a very complex kind of convergence happened between the Indian plate, the Eurasian plate, and the Tethys Sea. And that eventually led to the formation of the Himalayas. How the movement takes place, why the movement takes place, a question to be solved at a separate point of time because of the internal forces of the planet Earth. Now, when this movement did happen, right, stages of formation, you had multiple stages of formation. Now, in this particular case, what happened was, imagine this to be the Indian plate. Imagine this to be the Eurasian plate. In between them, you had the Tethys, the sea floor, and obviously the ocean. Now, the movement which is happening was not very far. It was 15 centimeter per year, but it was not something like today you went to sleep, tomorrow you woke up, the plate was gone somewhere. No, it took millions of years to move. So, from around 150 million years ago, the final collision happened around 65 million years back. So, you can imagine that there was a kind of a long time span in between them. So, the movement was quite naturally slow. Now, Indian plate was moving at a faster speed as compared to the Eurasian plate. Now, when these plates were, or these portions of land masses were moving towards each other, what they tried to do, or what they basically tried to get closer to when they got closer to each other, the sea floor started getting compressed. Some part of it started sinking here, the sea floor, some part of it started sinking here. About 5,000 square kilometer of the sea floor was consumed by Earth's interior because both the plates were moving towards each other. So imagine if, let's suppose I have this pencil that represents the Tethys Sea floor. So if both of them are pushing towards each other, what will happen? It is getting pushed like this, it is getting pushed here. So around 5,000 square kilometer of sea floor was consumed in Earth's interior. Okay. Now, eventually, as it was being pushed, if I can take the case of this paper. So see, imagine this to be the Indian plate. Indian plate is moving, the sea floor is sinking. Indian plate is moving, sea floor is sinking. But then this sea floor will also have a limitation because underneath it, planet Earth is a solid. So it cannot keep on sinking just like water. You have the portion of the sea floor, all those rocks getting pushed into the earth. So there will be some resistance. So if the Indian plate is moving very fast, and the sea floor is not able to move that fast, what happens to the sea floor? The sea floor gets deformed. So that is where, when you had the Indian plate which moved very fast, right? Indian plate moved very fast. The sea floor couldn't subduct. Subduct means going underneath. Subduct at the same rate. Eurasian side, Pankaj, at the same rate. Sea floor got deformed. Deformed. Then it started rising up. Okay, it started rising up. So what happened in this particular case is basically you had the Indian plate, you had the Eurasian plate, and the Tethyan sea floor, which was earlier like this, now that sea floor got folded. But this was not the Himalayas that you see today. After this, the further convergence or the collision happened. The Indian plate, Eurasian plate, and this is the sea floor. Sea floor. Now, after that, what happened was that you basically had the final convergence or the collision. Then, when both of these collided, so you had somewhat of a situation like this. This was the case of the Tethyan sea floor, which was already uplifted. Then the collision which happened created a landmass like this. Where the Tethyan sea floor started dominating these areas. The portion which was the sea floor became the portion of the mountain. Okay, we'll study about more of this tomorrow. Even today, these plates are moving. That is why the height of the Himalayas is still increasing. Yes, Vedant, that is correct. Okay. Srilekha, could you please send the PPT below before the class? No. All states having a coastal states, do the center gets any say in this jurisdiction in the territorial water? Shubhangi, yes. Malacca, will they revive? They will revise this territorial water. The UN clause basically talks about it as international water. Iran is not ready to accept it. That is the limitations of UN. Okay. Is there any specific reason for taking Greenwich as a reference? We have talked about it. London was the center of power at that point of time across the planet, Naresh, and that is where the meridian passing through Royal Observatory in London was considered to be the case of the prime meridian. Okay. Right. Okay. We'll discuss more about this tomorrow. Thank you. Take care. And tomorrow, come prepared. We will continue with the flow. Okay. I get distracted. So that is why make short notes. Okay. Make short notes. And then after the class, look at the recordings if required or the annotations of the PDF if required, and then make the longer notes. Okay. Yes, Ashwini. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow. Take care.